Welcome to the Labor Force Podcast. Stories of the working class in a time of renewed labor militancy and awareness that capitalism is a rotten deal. I'm your host, Mike Strukin, proud member of New York State United Teachers.
Here is what I want you to expect from the administration that this morning moved into the building behind me. We will transform the culture of City Hall from one of no to one of how. We will answer to all New Yorkers, not to any billionaire or oligarch who thinks they can buy our democracy. We will govern without shame and insecurity, making no apology for what we believe. I was elected as a democratic socialist, and I will govern as a democratic socialist. I will not abandon my principles for fear of being deemed radical. As the great senator from Vermont once said, what's radical is a system which gives so much to so few and denies so many people the basic necessities of life. We will strive each day to ensure that no New Yorker is priced out of any one of those basic necessities. And throughout it all, we will, in the words of Jason Terrence Phillips, better known as Jadakiss or Jay to the moi, be outside. Because this is a government of New York, by New York, and for New York.
Zohran Mamdani taking the helm as mayor of New York City, which you still have to wrap your head around, honestly. Not long ago, the idea of a democratic socialist running the city was something you joke about over beers, and now it's the real deal. Mamdani's come in on some pretty bold promises: universal child care, free bus rides, and yep, taxing the rich to pay for all of this. That last bit's huge because, of course, nothing in that city moves without budget fights, right? But I mean, just having a good plan isn't enough. Zohran's going to need some serious backup from Albany, so that means wrangling with Governor Hochul, who's been kind of a roadblock on tax increases. Although word is, maybe she's starting to bend a bit. Still, nobody should count those chickens yet. And here's where it gets even messier. You've got resistance from the political establishment, Adams' old budget headaches, and the city's economic big shots, who are, well, let's just say they're not exactly lining up to help a socialist mayor drain their pockets. Then you factor in the federal angle. Sure, Mamdani's managed not to get on Trump's bad side so far, but I'd be shocked if he didn't pull some federal funding stunts or, I don't know, lean on the NYPD to make life harder for progressive policies if it suits him. The point is, these obstacles are about as serious as it gets. Now here's the thing. Everyone knows focusing just on flashy new policies doesn't cut it. For Mamdani to stick the landing, it's got to be a movement, not a magic trick. And it looks like the left in the city knows it. The New York City DSA is in there pulling strategy sessions, talking about actually co-governing with him, not just cheering from the sidelines. They're pushing this tax the rich campaign hard, especially up in Albany. Then you've got groups like Our Time, which spun off from Zohran's campaign, working to keep all those volunteers active, so it isn't just some one-off election surge. Still, when folks talk about building working-class power, it's not just about knocking on doors or rallying at City Hall. Democratic socialism is really about ordinary people actually shaping the decisions that run their lives. Like, it's not just better buses or fatter public library budgets, it's how much voice regular New Yorkers have in running their neighborhoods and city. One idea floating around that's kind of exciting: popular assemblies, neighborhood or borough-level gatherings where people actually make decisions, not just give speeches. In cities where they've tried this elsewhere, think some stuff in Latin America, or even small experiments abroad, it becomes a way for everyday folks to weigh in directly, not just every 4 years on a ballot. You start giving people the real say, you boost not just the democracy, but also the energy to defend those new policies from attacks. I mean, it's not a magic bullet. New York's big and messy, but even piloting a few assemblies can make the city government way more responsive to working people. That's the dream anyway. If it works, it could change what we even think is possible from City Hall. Let's get into the labor part, because you know that's where my heart's at. The big picture's rough. Union density's been tanking across the U.S. for decades. We're at what, about 10% nationwide now? New York does a bit better, flirting with 20%, but even that's slipping. The thing is, unions there have been a bit too cozy with the status quo, sitting out fights, backing dead-end politicians. I'm just calling it like I see it. Here's where Zohran could shake things up. He doesn't just have the mayor title, he's got the platform. And that platform, if he really starts using it, means getting loud about workers' rights, giving cover to folks who want to organize, showing up on the line. He's already weighed in big for nurses fighting for their contracts, joined Starbucks workers on picket lines, and this is important, back new laws for Amazon drivers to unionize more easily. The trick is, though, union leadership isn't always thrilled with too much heat from below. There's kind of a tension here. Experts like Eric Blanc point out, sometimes you can't wait for the green light from lethargic union offices. Sometimes you need to back the rank and file, even if officialdom is dragging its heels or throwing up roadblocks. So that's where we're at. Zohran Mamdani is coming in not just promising bolder policies, but a new way of building power for working people, on the streets, on the job, and in City Hall. It's not going to be easy. Roadblocks are everywhere. But if this experiment even half works, it could show the whole country, and honestly the world, what's possible. In other updates, unfortunately going in the other direction for the time being, by a 53-43 party line vote, the Senate confirmed Crystal Carey as the new General Counsel of the NLRB, making a longtime corporate union buster the agency's chief enforcement officer and de facto chief of staff, a move that won't be good for workers. The same vote also filled 2 board seats, giving the NLRB a quorum for the first time in nearly a year and allowing it to act on union elections and other disputes, but both new members are Republicans and only 3 of 5 seats are filled. Labor organizations, especially the AFL-CIO, opposed all 3 nominees but focused their criticism on Carey because of her work at union-busting law firm Morgan, Lewis & Bockius for companies like Amazon, Apple, SpaceX, and Tesla, and her role in helping those firms, along with their billionaire owners, sue to declare the NLRB structure unconstitutional. As AFL-CIO Government Affairs Director Jody Calamine told senators, the NLRB General Counsel serves as the agency's chief prosecutor and policy leader, responsible for enforcing workers' rights. Crystal Carey's record demonstrates hostility to those rights. Calamine also noted Carey's past efforts to train clients on how to thwart organizing efforts, and her refusal during her confirmation hearing to affirm the board's constitutionality, saying only, quote, the courts will decide. Meanwhile, the effort of Democratic NLRB member Gwynne Wilcox, its first ever African-American woman member and female board chair, to reclaim her seat even though Trump illegally fired her, appears to have come to an end. Trump fired Wilcox in January, in defiance of labor law which says board members can be removed only for cause. Wilcox is a former counsel for the service employees, and Trump fired her, he said, because she didn't vote a pro-corporate line. Her term ran through August 2028. Wilcox sued and won in lower courts, but ultimately lost at the U.S. Supreme Court. There, Chief Justice John Roberts stopped her from returning and sent the whole mess down to the Federal Appeals Court in D.C. for a full-scale trial. In early December, she lost that too. The board, the judges stated, is a quasi-executive agency, and thus the president can remove anyone he wants, anytime he wants. Taken together, this isn't just a personnel change. It's a warning sign that the agency meant to protect workers may now be led by someone who spent her career showing employers how to beat unions at a moment when workers can least afford weaker enforcement. And in a tight and increasingly frustrating U.S. job market, many job seekers are turning to unconventional methods, including dating apps like Hinge, to find work opportunities. Tiffany Chow, a 20-year-old junior at the California College of the Arts, tailored her Hinge profile this fall to connect with people who could offer job referrals or interviews, even attending events through Matches in hopes of landing a summer internship. As Chow explained, quote, I feel like my approach to the dating apps is it being another networking platform like everything else, like Instagram or LinkedIn. About a third of dating app users in a recent survey said they had sought matches for job-related purposes, with many targeting people at employers they hope to work for. Rather than looking for romance, some users are focused on what someone can do for their career, as 18-year-old Alex Sao put it. Quote, a lot of connection in general just boils down to, how can you help me further my career? Dating companies themselves are wary of the trend. A Bumble spokesperson said job hunting isn't aligned with our mission. It doesn't create an authentic experience for our community. And other platforms discourage using their services for commercial purposes. Still, workers coping with AI-filtered resumes, crowded traditional job sites, and rising unemployment are repurposing every tool they can find. And for some, the gamble is paid off with interviews and connections that might not have come through conventional channels. It's yet another sign of how strained the labor market has become, forcing job hunters to blur the lines between personal and professional spaces just to be seen. In strike news, here's one. Telluride Ski Resort has been shut down amid an ongoing strike by the Telluride Professional Ski Patrol Association, whose members voted overwhelmingly to walk out after months of stalled contract negotiations with resort owner Chuck Horning over pay and working conditions, leading to a steep drop in visitors during a typically busy holiday season and prompting other nearby resorts to see increased bookings as Telluride tourism suffers. While the resort continues snowmaking and says it is actively developing and refining our safety plan to support a safe reopening as soon as possible, union leaders say Horning doesn't seem interested in communicating with us whatsoever, and lodging occupancy has fallen significantly compared with last year.
We are on an unfair labor practice strike related to negotiating our new contract with Telluride Ski and Golf.
What are you asking?
We are asking for a sustainable wage structure that supports attraction and retention, as opposed to a one-time pay increase that's going to land us in the same position again in 3 years.
I feel like it's pretty reasonable.
I think so. I think the actual monetary difference between what we're asking for and what the company's offering is quite small. They just seem unwilling to engage in a conversation about our wage structure, which we feel is outdated and doesn't give people a clear path in this career.
And how does it seem the community is responding to this?
I think there's varying opinions. I think there's a lot of people who are really supportive of us. I think there's a lot of people who are really scared about the potential of how this impacts the community. The unfortunate reality is that doing this does affect the community, but there's a certain point where we need to advocate for our group, and it's just more that we have the power to do so and other people don't because we're unionized.
Yeah. What about the idea that, Telsky's statement was something to the effect of like the ski patrollers are choosing to shut down the mountain? What's the
friendships?
what's kind of the response to that?
It's not within our power to do that. They've known for months that this was a potential direction this was going in, that this wasn't an empty threat, and that we were being really honest about our needs as an organization, and for them to say that it was our choice to do this is really unfair and hurtful to place the blame on our shoulders when we're just trying to live here.
That just shows you, nowadays, it doesn't matter the sector. It's fundamentally all the same. In this case, there's no resort without these workers, and they damn well know it. Kudos to them for holding the line and strategically doing so during the busy time of the year. Hit this greedy owner where it directly hurts. Now let's get into what some have been calling the so-called golden age for American workers under Trump. Now you probably heard this story spun a bunch of different ways. On cable news, in the headlines, that the working class had it made. Jobs were coming back, factories were roaring again. But honestly, what really got delivered? The administration promised major policy shifts, manufacturing rebound, better trade deals, fewer jobs heading overseas. But was there any real structural shift in labor's power? Or just some big headlines and a couple ribbon cuttings? If you look past the talking points, a lot of folks on the ground were waiting for change that never really stuck. Maybe it felt like deja vu from other years. So what do we actually believe? The stories we're told, or what we see and feel in our own communities? Which sort of brings me to the way corporate media covers all this. Look, I know I'm picking a fight with Goliath here, but you can't talk about the reality for working people without digging into who's shaping the stories. Think about it. The networks, they're run by folks from the top 1%. And let's be real, their coverage almost always props up the status quo. Ever notice how labor stories are either buried or spun like everything's basically fine? Maybe just a blip here and there? They'll highlight when a handful of folks get bonuses after a tax cut, but they'll breeze past layoffs, or when wages don't actually keep up with inflation. That's why I want to shout out independent media. They take a totally different approach. Nonprofit, reader or viewer supported, not running ads, not selling your data. They say their whole mission is to serve the 99%, cover the news that matters for working people. And I gotta say, that perspective matters. You can spot it in what they choose to run with. When everyone else is distracted by billionaire drama or corporate mergers, you'll catch them focusing on unions, workplace safety, strikes, stuff that actually impacts regular people. There's a difference between being informed and just being fed a narrative that keeps things cozy for people at the top. It's kind of crazy, the way the big players can shape what we care about or how we see policy. If all you hear are success stories, or that any rough patch is just a bump in the road, you start wondering if it's just you not making it. But independent newsrooms, when they pick up those buried stories, suddenly you remember, oh right, it's not just me. The system itself, it's got cracks. And who benefits when those cracks are painted over or ignored? Not working folks, that's for damn sure. So let's cut through the spin for a second. If you actually get into what working people have experienced during the Trump years, the story is pretty different. Independent reporting again lays it out. Wages basically stagnant. Good jobs still feeling pretty shaky under your feet. Cost of living creeping up while corporate profits soar. It's not exactly the portrait of a new working class golden age. The power structure, the folks with the wealth and the leverage, they're the ones who still call the shots year after year. I mean, on paper, sure, some things might have looked better for a bit, but when you dig deeper, the story most Americans tell isn't about a golden age, it's about fighting to stay afloat. If we want to change things, maybe it starts with honest conversations about power, about who gets to write the headlines, and about what's actually happening at the ground level. And that said, there's this kind of collective nightmare we've all just slogged through. I mean, you don't have to look far. Political chaos, economic shit that just doesn't make sense for regular folks, and a feeling like everything could come apart at any second. There's a line Robert Wright shared. It's a quote, actually, from some woman who, I kid you not, basically stopped him in the street and said, quote, "It's a fucking nightmare." And you know, you just feel that in your bones sometimes. That's the mood, right? But what stuck with me, and what Wright points out, is that sometimes you have to hit that nightmare before you really see what's been simmering under the surface for years. Like it takes something ugly and raw to shake people out of the day-to-day. It kind of reminds me of something from when I was a kid. You know, there was that whole thing with the LA riots, and I can remember sitting watching the news footage. You're just a kid, but seeing those images, you get this sense, almost like a jolt, of how exposing something, that raw display on TV or social media today, can wake people up, force them to face stuff they'd rather ignore. And if you look at history, you see it over and over. I mean, Martin Luther King Jr., the whole strategy was making people see the horror, folks getting clubbed and dragged around on the nightly news. No one could pretend it wasn't happening. That's partly why we got the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. You can go even further back. Think about those muckraker journalists in the early 1900s. They pulled back the curtain on the whole rotten structure propping up the robber barons. Shit was nasty, and people had to confront it. That's pretty much how we got a lot of the social reforms from that era. So all this pain and chaos we're seeing isn't just random suffering. It's forcing crises to the surface, making it impossible to turn away. And you know, since we're talking history, Let's get real about what happened over the last, almost half a century now. There used to be this thing folks called the basic bargain. You work hard, you play by the rules, you'll probably do better than your parents did, and your kids will do even better than you. That was the deal. But then things started to slide. Rights traces it back to Reagan and the 1980s, but it's kind of a slow motion wreck. Deregulation, privatization, Wall Street gambling, shipping work overseas, busting unions left and right. If you were just some kid in a Midwestern factory town, like in Flint, Michigan, for example, you could go from being pretty well set to just stuck without much hope overnight. The rich got richer, and most just stood still or slid backward. Let's talk CEO pay, because that's one of those things that sneaks up on you. When Wright said it used to be 20 times an average worker's wage, and now it's 300 times, 300. You almost think it can't be real, but it is. You've got these crazy numbers while regular people are told to be grateful for scraps. And the more you look, the more you realize it wasn't just Republicans in charge either. Sure, Republican presidents led the charge, but Democratic ones didn't exactly stop it. All the while, big money was tightening its grip on politics, and the rot was eating away at everything underneath. It's wild, too, because you start thinking about all the manufacturing towns like Flint. Places where if you had a job in the plant, you could buy a house, send your kids to college, maybe even save a little. Now what do you have? A few billionaires sitting up top, and a lot of folks hustling just to stay afloat. It used to be about providing good jobs and fair wages. Now it's just about corporate profits, shareholder value, and making the rich richer. That changes the backdrop for everything we're talking about today. So where does this all lead? I don't know about you, but lately it feels like there's finally a shift happening, even if it's messy. Reich talks about record protests, local organizing, election wins in places no one thought possible. Like seriously, these aren't just blue cities we're talking about. It's happening in red states too. I mean, there's a kind of energy out there that I've not seen in my lifetime. The rot is exposed now. People are finally calling out these so-called leaders, the billionaire class, tech moguls, politicians who will just flip sides for a quick buck. And the thing is, we're realizing the system, as it stands, isn't really built for us. Most of the leadership class, to borrow a phrase, couldn't care less about regular working people. It's all about self-preservation for them. I guess what I'm saying, and maybe this is just me being cautiously hopeful, is that this fucking nightmare, as Reich put it, could be the one thing that finally wakes us up. No guarantee, obviously, but if we don't seize the moment, who will? And finally, a report from the PBS NewsHour contrasts our hustle culture of hypercapitalism and materialism with hygge, a Danish and Norwegian concept embracing coziness, contentment, and well-being.
Klaus Andersen is a professor of Scandinavian studies at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Originally from Denmark, where hygge is part of the national identity, Andersen defines the term as pleasant togetherness.
It comes with this air of happiness, of contentment, of having a more balanced life.
Andersen says the idea took on its current meaning in the late 19th century, after Denmark lost about a third of its territory in a war with Austria and Prussia.
The motto in the country became, what outwardly has been lost, inwardly should be gained. So people got together with their backs to the world and say, we're good enough the way we are.
He says hygge gained popularity in the UK around 2015, when the country was debating its exit from the European Union.
The year after is when it came to the U.S., is where you saw the hygge books exploding. You saw the first social media posts. And that, of course, right, was at the time of Donald Trump's election to his first presidency. So I think these moments, right, both in Denmark, in the U.K., and in the U.S., where you sort of turn you back to the world, is where hygge then comes to play.
Hygge was a runner-up for Word of the Year in 2016. Now, there are millions of hygge posts across social media, with scenes of fireplaces, steaming mugs, people snuggled under warm blankets.
This idea that we post the moment, right, is antithetical to the idea of hygge, because when we are on social media, we are not paying attention to the people we're with. We're not engaged in pleasant togetherness. We're more interested in staging it.
So here's what Andersen does.
we have what we call afternoon snack, where even though the kids are older now, right, they're around the house, we're all busy, and then at one point during the afternoon, we all sit down together. And being there, right, being together for those minutes, right, just breathing, seeing each other, and just insisting on this is important because we're together. That's all that matters. That is an instance of hygge.
And while he says hygge is inherently anti-materialistic, he points to one item that can really help: candles.
It's something that creates a certain intimate atmosphere. It makes you want to sit down and stay at the dining table maybe for 2-3 minutes longer than you would have otherwise.
Do you think it's possible for Americans living in the busy lifestyles that they do, where it's a very go, go, go society? Do you think that hygge is possible here?
Yes, but in a different way, right? I know that there are many who want to embrace some of these things that they associate with hygge. But of course, the things that the social welfare in Denmark provides, free health care, daycare, generous welfare benefits if you lose your job, that takes the worry out of everyday life for a number of Danes, is not something you find here in the US. So there might still be some challenges for Americans to fully embrace the concept.
Yes, we can all aspire to an afternoon snack with the whole family gathered together. No working 2 jobs, no having to wrangle the kids through all the hustle and bustle here, there, and everywhere. No childcare worries, no money problems. But you heard the man. No such luck in America. Too many rough edges. So on we go. I guess some candles wouldn't hurt now and then. So that's where we land this week. Between a socialist mayor trying to turn City Hall into something working people can actually shape, a labor board being hollowed out from the inside, job seekers swiping for interviews, and ski patrollers reminding a billionaire who really makes the place run. It all points to the same truth. The system as built isn't working for most people, and everyone feels it, whether they have the language for it yet or not. The golden age stories, the hustle culture myths, the idea that if you just grind harder, everything will fall into place, they all fall apart once you really look. What's left is something messier, scarier, but also more honest. Power matters. Who has it, who doesn't, and what happens when regular people decide they're done pretending they don't notice the imbalance. And yeah, it does feel like a nightmare sometimes. But history tells us that moments like this, when the cracks are impossible to ignore, are also when things can change. Not automatically, not painlessly, but only if people organize, tell the truth about what's happening, and refuse to let the story be written entirely by those at the top. So take the coziness where you can find. Light a candle, sit with your people, but don't confuse comfort with surrender, because whether it's at City Hall, on the job, or in the streets, nothing gets better unless working people decide to make it so. Well, that does it for this episode. If you like what you hear, give a rate or review on your favorite podcast app to help me grow. I'm proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network, with over 200 labor shows you can check out at laborradionetwork.org. This has been the Labor Force Podcast. I'm Mike Strukin. Solidarity, always.